This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Rebel Author Podcast. We have hit 6 episodes. I cannot believe it. Actually, no, I can, because it has been a roller coaster of technical hickory, pokery, jiggery, whatever. It's been a roller coaster. Anyway, this week I was delighted to be on the Alliance of Independent Authors Fiction and Non-Fiction podcast with Orna Ross. We were talking about all things marketing and specifically answering the question, who is your reader and why should you care? I have got the link, so I will link to that episode in the show notes. But I have another announcement, because I'm even more delighted to say that I will be a regular guest on their podcast. Well, no, I'm going to be a regular host on their podcast going forward. Their podcast, this particular podcast, is every second Monday, I believe, of the month. And I will be hosting their fiction and non-fiction podcast episode with Adam Croft. If you don't know who Adam Croft is, then go back and, listen to episode 1 of the Rebel Author Podcast, where I talk to Adam all about the indie author mindset. Each month, we're going to tackle one particular theme or question, and we'll be looking at it from both the point of view of writing fiction and writing non-fiction, or selling, as the case may be. Okay, next in, I am trying to suppress a serious amount of excitement because I have been working with Icy Cedric, who designed the Rebel Author Podcast logo, to create a new logo saying, I'm a Rebel Author, because, my devious little darlings, that is exactly what we are. And not gonna lie, I really want it on a hoodie. So I have been looking at using Redbubble, which is, it's a kind of custom art sales store, I suppose is the easiest way to describe it, where you can put logos or artwork you can print them onto various different items of clothing or merchandise. So I'm going to get a hoodie and then I'm going to put them on sale if any of you guys would also like to join my Rebel Author Club. So stay tuned. I will hopefully have more information on that probably next time, possibly the episode after. Okay, I also have a book recommendation for you this week. Ali Ingleby, a patron, recommended Dear Writer, You Need to Quit by Becca Syme. Now, I appreciate that sounds wildly pessimistic and negative, but it's not, because this book makes you question all of your, writer bullshit that you put up in your head about creative blocks, or just anything, any habitual habits or things that you're doing that are really detrimental to your creative mindset and your writing business. And I can tell you personally that Becca Syme must be some kind of psychic voodoo witch, because boy, did I feel called out within about 3 pages of reading this book. It was fantastic. But I mean, it simultaneously made my week and completely ruined it. So yeah, I cannot recommend this book enough. Becca is a genius. So you have to go listen. I mean, listen? Wait, well, possibly. Actually, it might be an audiobook. I'm reading it. But yeah, go read or listen or do all of the things. Just get the book in your life. I also wanted to, give you a bit of a personal update about Nanowrimo. I don't think I've done really a personal update in this way before, but I'm going to do one today. So I wasn't going to do Nano this year, and I'll tell you why. The last time I published fiction was 18 months ago in July 2018, which is unacceptable as far as I am concerned. You know, I just quit my job to write full time, and it's been 6 months and I've still not published a fiction book. In fact, I haven't published anything since I left, which is not a good place to be in if you're meant to be writing full time. So, yeah, I mean, I've spent 18 months basically bashing my head against Trey, which is the third book in my young adult fantasy series and the one that I'm working on. And I'll be honest, I don't really have a lot of finishing energy. I struggle to finish projects. I love starting all of the things, and I'm all right until about 70% through, and I do, in a weird way, I do get a bit of a rush when you can see the end in sight, but that's usually when you have like 5% left rather than still 25% left. And anyway, I didn't want to stop Trey, because if I stopped working on Trey, I felt like I would never go back. I felt like I wouldn't finish my series, and that was unacceptable to me. I didn't want to do that to readers. I didn't want to do that to myself. And so the prospect of going into Nano and working on something else was terrifying, because I genuinely thought that I wasn't going to be finishing my series. But with so many creative things, I am learning that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And so I did. I have been working on The Anatomy of Prose, which is my next non-fiction book. And I genuinely really thought on the first day of Nano that was it. I was saying goodbye to Trey, and fuck knows what was going to happen to the rest of that series. But within 5 days of doing Nano, I came up with a solution. And Nano has been good for so many other reasons. Number one, I have redeveloped a daily writing habit, and if I am being completely honest, because I was struggling so hard with Trey, I got to the point where I hated it. I hated writing. I hated the book. I hated sitting down at my desk. I just hated fiction. And that is a dangerous place to be in if you are a full-time writer. So, yes, here is me saying, be brave. If anybody else out there is bashing their head against the wall on a particular project, just stop. Have faith in yourself that taking a break does not mean that you won't return to your book. You will return to your book. If I can return to my book, you can. Just be empowered to experiment and to take breaks and to work on other things. We don't have to start one project and go until the end. That is what I thought I had to do, and it's a load of shit. So I'm rebelling against my old rules in my brain. And I am now excited to go back to work on Trey. So my point is, and I'm going to stop waffling now, if you are stuck, then please just have faith in yourself and take a break. You will find that there are many, many benefits to working on something else when you have been struggling. The listener rebel of this week is Renee Gallant. Renee says, "My husband is 7 years older than me. We started seeing each other when I was just 16 and he was 24. My father had a conniption and forbid us to continue seeing each other." Just a side note, I absolutely love the word conniption. Many of my friends who know me in real life will describe me as a conniption, which is a fit of excitement which is a fit of spontaneous excitement or anger, that is totally me. Anyway, Renee continues to say, "We snuck around and she did get pregnant, but they got married when she was 17 and they have been married for 30 years. Wow, you need a medal. In fact, anybody that's been married for 30 years needs a medal, because let's be real here, people. We all love our spouses. I love my wife, but marriage, it is hard work." When they had been married for 21 years, she finally had to tell her parents to get over it. It's all gravy now, other than the fact that she was and is a people pleaser. Girl, you are not a people pleaser. You got married at 17 to somebody who was, like, I can't do maths, 8 years older than you, and your parents were totally against it. You're a total rebel. She insists that she is still working on her rebellious side. You can find Renee everywhere at the writer Renee, which is Renee. If you would like to be a listener rebel, then you can email your rebel story to rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet me at rebelauthorpods. Pods? No, you can't. You can tweet me at rebelauthorpod. Okay, no new patrons this week, but I would like to take a minute to say thank you to each and every one of my patrons supporting the show. It really, really means a lot to me. Not only are you helping to actually run and continue running this podcast, but you make me feel like what I do matters. So thank you. If you would like to get early access to the show, then you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Sasha Black, and that is Sasha with a C. On with the show. Hello and welcome back to the Rebel Author Podcast. Today I am with Renee Conoulty. Renee is an Australian Air Force wife and mother of 2. She writes stories of dance, romance and military life, including heart swings, catching onyx and swinging through life. If you run into Renee at the shops, make sure you wave to get her attention, because she'll likely be listening to an audiobook or lost in a daydream. Renee, welcome.
Hello, good morning or good evening. I'm not sure where we are today. We're all over the world.
We are. I love it. I love that technology can connect us from quite literally thousands of miles away. You are in the future. Tell me, what happens in the future?
The sun comes up.
Yes.
That's about as far as I've got. Coffee still works. And that's about where I'm at so far today.
That is the 2 most important things. The sun rose and there is still coffee in the world. We're all
yes.
good. So thank you very much for getting up super early for me. It is very late here, but hey, we've made it, and that's the important thing. So tell me a little bit about your author journey and how you got to where you are.
Well, unlike most people I hear who have always wanted to be authors, that was never something on my radar. I'd never dreamt of being an author. I was always an avid reader, and I'd put authors up on this godlike pedestal that they were up there and amazing creative beings, and that wasn't me, and that could never be me. But it sort of all happened by accident. One thing led to another, which led to another. I see it really triggered off when my husband joined the military, and we had to move from the town we were living in across the country to up to Darwin, which is right up the north of Australia. And I'd never been there before. I didn't know anything about military life. So the avid fiction reader that I was, I went looking for books, for stories set in Darwin or stories with Australian military life, and I couldn't find any. So it was after we moved up to Darwin, and I'd been reading more. I joined an online book club to try to make friends, and then got into book blogging so that I could get more books, because there's never enough books. And through those connections, I actually met some authors and discovered that they're actually people.
Well, I mean, that is a bit of a stretch.
I know. It took me by surprise for a while. It took a little bit of getting used to that they were normal people like me. I was a person too, and maybe it wasn't out of the realms to be able to write a book. So with a bit of prodding from a few online author friends and other bloggers, I signed up for Camp Nanowrimo, which is like Nanowrimo in November, which is the month people try to write 50,000 words in a month, which I found way too overwhelming. So Camp Nano, you're allowed to change the rules and make them up yourself.
You already sound like a rebel.
Much more my style. I'd rather just change the rules and do it my way.
Yeah.
So I set a 20,000 word goal and hit it. And then I figured, okay. So I kept going and I haven't looked back.
And so how long have you been, when was the first nano that you did?
The first nano I did was in 2015. So it took me probably about a year to get through the first draft of the first book, because I got that 20,000 words in. Then I thought, okay, I better take this seriously and go and actually read some writing craft books because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I went and did a bit of sort of research and did some online courses and kept writing and came back and kept writing and got to a point where I needed to know my character's backstory. So I just wrote it and then copied and pasted it out of the novel because it didn't need to be in there, and turned that into a short story. So that's now the prequel to the novel that I first wrote, which is actually currently in limbo because I'm in the process of having my rights returned from the publisher that I worked with.
So are you traditionally published?
I'm a bit of everything published. I've worked with three small traditional publishers, so three small publishers all over Australia and the US. And it was earlier this year I just decided I'd rather do it all myself. I really like to be in control of everything.
Come to the dark side.
And I've self-published a few other books, and it's like, I want them all back. Give me all my books. So I just emailed everyone and asked really nicely, can I please have my rights back to everything? And everyone said sure. And so it's just taken a bit of time to go through the process.
Gosh, you're so lucky that they've
come back. I'm going to relaunch them all.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You are very, very lucky that they all said yes. That is fantastic. So how many books are you getting back?
I've got a children's book back, which I just relaunched a couple of weeks ago, from a small publisher in Queensland. And then I've got a novelette back from a publisher in Perth that's they're still selling it as part of their anthology. So I said they can still have the rights to include it there, but I'd like the rights to sell it as an individual ebook, paperback and audio, of course. We have to do everything. And the other one is a novel, and then there's some associated short stories with that. And then I'm writing a couple more novels because that's a whole series.
Amazing.
So the series is in limbo at the moment, and I've got, sort of a few other short stories and children's books and non-fiction books out there.
And the non-fiction, or at least one of the non-fiction books, is the reason that we are here today. So So we are here to talk about creating audiobooks and specifically empowering indies to create their own audiobooks. So tell me how that came about, how you decided to record your own audiobook.
I listen to audiobooks more than read with my eyes these days. I've always loved audio. When I got my first book published, most people are sort of dying to see their book sitting on a bookshelf somewhere in a shop. I wanted an audiobook. That was my goal. That's what I wanted. That's why I chased up a publisher in the US, because I couldn't access ACX and I wanted an audiobook. But with the initial cost of the audiobook, the novel wasn't selling enough to rationalise spending that on the audio at that point. So the audio just kept getting pushed back and not happening. So I thought, well, I just want an audiobook. That's all I want. That's my goal. I thought, damn it, I'll do it myself.
I love it.
So after I thought about it, sort of tossed around the idea for a little while and thought, no, I can't do that. I'm not a voice actor. I don't know what I'm doing. And did all that sort of doubtful self-talk that we all do. But I looked at a few things online. I read a couple of books, and then, of course, my laptop died, which was a very sad day, and I had to go into the shops and buy a new laptop. So while I was in JB Hi-Fi, I kind of wandered around to the other end of the store and just had a little look at the microphones.
Fatal. Absolutely fatal.
Yeah, totally walked out of there with a laptop and a microphone.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I've spent the money now. I better earn it back and go and make some audiobooks. So that's how it all started.
Amazing. And so was your first one fiction or non-fiction?
I started with fiction. I started with one of my the flash fiction collections and short stories that I'd published because as a beginner narrator, I didn't want to jump into a full-length novel, and I didn't actually have the rights to do the audio on my full-length novel anyhow. So I started with Catching Onyx, which is a 3,000-word short story. That's my perma-free short story up everywhere as an ebook, just sort of to get my name out there, that sort of thing. So I did the audio for that one, and then I've got 2 flash fiction collections. They've got about 10 or 12 stories each in them. So then I worked through those and then worked through the children's books, and then worked through the non-fiction, sort of went all the way through. The non-fiction happened because I did those first probably 3 books, and I had people online, like other author friends, saying, how did you do that? And after the 10th person said, how did you do that? And I tried to explain things in Facebook comments. I thought, look, I'm just going to write a blog post and then I can send that to people. I can send people a link and then I don't have to repeat myself. So I sat down, opened the laptop, thought I'll just do it in a Word doc and then I can format it and copy and paste it in later. 4 hours later, I was still writing. I'd hit about 6,000 words and decided I don't think it's a blog post anymore. And I still had more to say. So I went and had a break, and got myself a cuppa and come back and kept going. And over the next I had to finish it and go and be responsible for children and things. So I got back to it the next day and finished off, and I ended up with just over 10,000 words, which was a brief sort of breakdown of this, you do this, and this is why I did it, and this is like all the different steps, and here's all the technical stuff, and this is what it means. And I kept breaking it down because I go, well, I know what that means, but nobody else would, so I'd have to go and add a bit more detail about this and to explain concepts. And I went, okay, well, now it's a book. And I go, and I suppose I better narrate it. So
yeah, that would be ironic.
Well, it was amazing. I'd gone looking for so many books on how to narrate audiobooks and do audio, and I couldn't find them in audio. They were all in ebooks.
Which is completely ironic.
I'm going to make a book about audiobooks, I'm going to make it in audio too.
And so for listeners, I have both listened to the audiobook and then loved it so much I immediately brought the paperback as well, because I like to handwrite notes on in my non-fiction books where I've learnt loads of things. And I have to say, I think it is one of my top 2 books for writers that I have read this year. It is absolutely fantastic because it is so instructional, and it literally takes an author from, that you've got an idea, you want to put your book into audio, to completed published audiobook. I've never seen anything like it. That's why I was so desperate to speak to you, because like you say, there are no instructional books out there. There are, like I listened to one on how to start a podcast. I think it's called So You Want to Start a Podcast. It was great, and it was, but it was very blue sky and strategic and not very tactical, and everybody's too afraid to do these tactical books. So I loved it, and I really urge anybody who's even considering doing an audiobook to go and buy it. So tell me, how difficult is it really to record an audiobook?
I don't think it's difficult. It's time consuming. But if you can write a novel, if you can sit there and figure out how to edit a novel, if you can do all your basic things and use a laptop computer, you can do it. You can narrate it. If you can talk and people can understand what you say, you can make an audiobook. It's just, there is a learning curve. You do need to spend some time practicing because it does take some time, and you get better as you go on. If you listen to my first audiobook compared to my latest one, you'll probably hear a difference. Same as the first podcast to the latest podcast, there's always a difference. You get better as you practice.
Exactly.
With your ability to do a podcast, you could absolutely do an audiobook. No hesitation.
Well, so the funny thing is, I did record, I got all the way, I think, I had one more recording session on my first non-fiction book, and unfortunately the person that I was working with had their equipment stolen, so I lost everything, which is very unfortunate, and made me very sad, but it's sort of made me even more determined to do it myself and myself only, because then it's just augmenting my control freak nature.
Oh, I totally get you.
Yeah, if we're being honest, that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I self-teach everything. It's like, well, I want to know how to do that. So most people would outsource it. I'm like, well, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I have more time than money. Yeah. If it gets to the point where I have more money than time, then I'll possibly outsource more things, as long as people do them the way I want them to do them.
Down to the very second and nanosecond of silence. Yeah. So you have said that it's time consuming. How long does it really take?
Okay. When you talk audiobooks, people talk per finished hour. So that means when you're listening to an audiobook, it might be, say, 5 hours long. So that's the finished hours. The amount of time that goes into making that 5 hours of audio is definitely more than 5 hours. So if you're looking at one finished hour of audio, that's usually around 9 to 10,000 words of text to get the hour. So you would spend probably 2 hours recording that, because you'll say everything, you'll make a mistake, you'll take a break, you'll go and you'll repeat yourself, you'll have interruptions, the dog will bark at the postman, guaranteed something is going to happen like that. Or the other day, the dog would bark at the neighbour's cat. You'll open the front door to chase the neighbour's cat away. The dog will decide to attempt to chase the neighbour's cat as well. But since the screen door was shut, we'll go the other direction and try to go through the front window. And then you'll have to pack your audio equipment up and get the glazier around to replace your front window.
Oh, my goodness me. And that's obviously just completely made up on the spot.
Oh, no, yeah. That's imaginary. There's not still tape on my front window that I've forgotten to take off. But yeah, things happen, so you have to allow for that. But usually you'd look at, say, about 2 hours in the recording. And then when you go back to edit that, you'll have at least the 2 hours, because you have to actually play back everything you recorded. Plus you'll have another hour or two where you're cutting and deleting sections out and then re-listening to make sure it flows through, those sorts of things. So that the most time-consuming part is the editing. The bit most people are scared of is the mastering, and that's where you get all the sound levels right. That is definitely the most technical part, but it's the quickest. It really comes down to a couple of clicks, and it's done in a couple of minutes, if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely true of me as well. So
yep.
I, having just done a few podcasts already, I have to clip audio. I suppose I am a little bit scared because, I know that when I was recording the audiobook the first time, I had to speak a lot slower because naturally I speak quite fast. But the thing that scares me is, when you do make a mistake, and it's not the clipping, the technical clipping, it's making sure that you still, the words and sentences still sound like they're flowing and like there wasn't a mistake that you've just cut out there. But I suppose that's just about being slow enough that you leave enough space between your words instead of rabbiting on like I normally do.
Totally relate to that one.
Just shut up, Sasha.
If you do make a mistake, you go back and repeat the whole sentence. Yeah. Don't try to sort of pick up halfway through a sentence, because you will find the words will flow together. And then as you've seen when you've done the editing, you've got the sound waves and they will blend together if you're speaking your words together. So it's much easier to cut a section if you pause at the end of the sentence where you've got your full stop.
Yeah.
And actually take a break. So go back, if you notice you've made a mistake, go back and repeat the whole sentence, and then it's much easier to clip out the one you don't want.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is as well, after staring at audio for long enough, you can actually recognise sounds in waves. So I know when I've taken a breath. When I'm looking at the podcast audio, I know when I've taken a breath because I can see it, and it's almost like I breathe exactly the same every time, which I probably do, but it sounds ridiculous because I'm like, well, surely sometimes I take a bigger breath or whatever. But the sound waves are the same, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I can recognise the P sound.
Oh, interesting.
Because you can get, if it gets a bit too plosive, if you've sort of blown into the microphone too much, it gets really big. And what you can do with that is you highlight that little P section, and then you can amplify it with a negative number. So de-amplify it. So it's still there. You can just make it a bit quieter if it's popping in your ears too much. There's little tricks around things like that. I don't think I've actually put that one in the book because I've come up with that little tip since I wrote the book.
I know,
which is the joy of writing non-fiction books. Something always changes after you've published it.
Oh, I know.
But I do have a link to a resources page at the end of the book, which I can pass on to you, and you can pop that in the show notes if people want to have a look straight through to there. And any little extra bits that I come up with, I pop it in them into that website.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. I suspect people will probably have just heard pen scribbling because I was definitely writing that down. Now, one of my favourite tips, and actually I preferred it in the audio for obvious reasons, was what you do when you make a mistake. Please do demonstrate for listeners.
Well, I play back everything. So when I'm listening for flow and things like that, so I hear all my mistakes. But a lot of people, especially if you're doing a big audio book, will make a sound or something to show where the mistake is, so that you don't have to play back the entire thing. You can just sort of skip through to the spots where the mistakes are. So you could make a click noise, and that will give you a straight up spike, or you can go make a loud noise that does a high spike. You can click with your tongue. I started doing that, and then I sort of ended up blowing raspberries because it was annoying me. And that's also a sound that you can identify as you're scrolling through. And I do find when I'm listening, I often have to edit out swear words and hysterical laughter because I've repeated the same sentence about 4 times and I still haven't said it correctly.
Oh yes, I'm laughing because I recall when I was recording it the first time, having to re-say certain things about 800 times. However, I know that Joanna Penn, when she is recording her audiobooks, will go back and edit her ebooks and paperbacks in order to make them.
I've done that too, yes.
yeah, and I think I might end up having to do that as well. I know I recall the one particularly tricky sentence that I was like, I could fucking change it, because you, and that is the wonderful thing about being an indie author, you can.
Yes.
Okay, so this will, I guess, probably only be correct at the time of recording. But what basic kit and equipment would an author need to record an audiobook?
A laptop, which most of us would have if we're an indie author. The thing that I had to spend money on was the microphone. So you do need a good microphone. You do need an appropriate type of microphone. I go into a bit more detail in the book about that. The microphone I ended up buying is called a Rode NT USB microphone. It cost me about 150 Australian dollars from the shop in town. Other microphones people talk about are a Blue Yeti. What microphone do you use?
I was just looking, so I had a feeling you'd ask me that. I have the AT2020, which I know is another common one that lots of people use.
That's another one I think I've linked on the resource page. So all those microphones, the thing they have in common is that they don't pick up sound from everywhere. You've got some microphones are designed for being on stage and picking up singers in a band, and they're going to pick up all the sound. You don't want a microphone that picks up all the sound. You don't want like a lapel mic that's going to pick up too much stuff. You need a microphone that you can put in front of your face and it picks up the sounds from you and your phone dinging in the background if you leave it on like I just did. So it's more directional. It'll get the sound from you. Or the other style they talk about is cardioid, which is a weird name that made me think it was some horrible technical thing. All cardioid means is that it's the sound pattern that it picks up, which is scoops around in front of you and it doesn't pick up the sound from beside. So that's just some things after reading lots of audio blogs and watching YouTube videos, I sort of understood what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what I've got. That's what you've got. That's what most people who are podcasting would have, a microphone like that anyhow. If you're going to look at doing dictation, a lot of people are doing that as they're writing, as a different style of writing. It's the same kind of microphone that would make that really useful too. So investing in a microphone can be useful for other things apart from audiobook narration.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing...
What else do we need?
Software, but you can get free software, can't you? I know I use free software.
I'm using Audacity, which is free. That's open source software, so there's a lot of information and help on how to use that and little plugins to download that you can add in there that give you extra technical things you can do. So I've got a plugin I use that's called ACX Check. And it's designed that you click that button and it checks your audio to see if you're within the ranges that ACX requires, which is so handy.
Yes, I've also written that down.
Yep.
This is such a good podcast.
If you have a look in the book, I've actually linked to the page that you can download that in the resources section. So
Okay.
I'll make sure it's in the resources page when I send you the link.
Amazing. Now, so there's two other things that one segues, but the other thing that I use for podcasting is an arm, and it would depend entirely on where people are going to record. But I have my mic attached to my desk because the amount of conference calls and podcast interviews I do not want to be packing my microphone away. So I have, I think they're called a mic arm or a mic swing arm or something like that. Yep. So if you are intending on recording a lot of audiobooks and or even going into podcasting, then I would also recommend one of those. Now, the only other thing segues into the next question, which is blankets and or anything to muffle the sound. So
yes.
This is the only other thing that terrifies me is getting the setup of the room correct. Yep. Now, how? Because I know that lots of people reporting.
Everybody talks about the wardrobe.
Yeah,
that's where I started. I know you don't have the wardrobe, and that's the issue I had. When I started, I was living in another house, a defence house on the other side of town, and I had this lovely walk-through wardrobe, and you'd have the hanging clothes on both sides. You'd have a door at either side. You went through to the bathroom. So if I shut the door, I got a couple of broomsticks and put them across the little shelves at the back and hung some blankets down. I had this great little room for recording. And then we bought a house on the other side of town that didn't have that. So I was a bit stuck. I'm like, right, what do I do now? So I ended up in the master bedroom. I had the wardrobe doors open beside the bed. And I dragged in a clothes rack and I hung some blankets over that, and I grabbed a pile of pillows and stacked them up on the bed, and I totally built a pillow fort and climbed inside that. I did discover, though, that it's not a good idea to use bean bags as the base for the pillows on the bed. Because things start to crackle and then tumble over and squash you. So make sure you're using sturdy pillows as a base if you're going to build a pillow fort. Since then, my husband's a carpenter, so I sent him to work. And he said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I want a recording booth. Can you please build me one? But because as a military spouse, our family moves around every 3 years or so. We're due to move after Christmas this year. So I couldn't build anything permanent. I needed to have something that I could pack up and put away, especially because we're in a small house. So I designed something and got hubby to build it. So it looks like a room divider. If you can imagine like two pit panels hinged together, and if you sort of fold them out, that makes a corner. And I've got 2 sets of those, so I can just fold them out and put them together to make a big square. And then I can just fold them up and put them up against the wall. They've got packing blankets stapled to them. They're timber frames with just moving blankets stapled to them for now. When I have some more money and can afford some acoustic blankets, because they're a little more expensive, I'll upgrade my blankets. But for now, I've built a little movable room.
So does somebody have to have a small compact space, or could they, for example, use their office? And if they have an office, how, do they need to staple blankets to the walls, or should I think you might have seen my bookcase behind me, should I drape blankets over that? I mean, like, how blankety do we need to go here?
Well, what the blankets do, what the idea of all these things is to cut down the echo and cut down the external sound. I did try with my little folding things that my husband made me. I did try setting them up in the little shed in the back garden, and we've got a little garden office shed. We've renovated and put insulation in the walls and everything, but it's still a tin shed, and every time a bird flew past, I could hear the bird's wings flapping, let alone the squawks it was making. So it wasn't going to cut that sound out, whereas being inside the brick house with the big roof, that cuts a lot of that external sound out. So you want to be able to cut some of the road noise from traffic outside and cut some of that external noise. So you need to be inside a room. You can't do recording outside. And all the blankets and things, we use all those to cut the echo, because sound works in sound waves. And as you speak, the sound goes out in front of you and it bounces off any hard surfaces and comes back. And that's how you get an echo in the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to cut that echo. You can hear it yourself. If you go and stand in your bathroom and you talk, you can hear the echo come back off the tiles. You can hear the sound is different compared to if you go into probably your bedroom and you speak. You might still have lots of exposed walls, but a lot of that sound gets soaked up by all the soft things like the mattress and the pillows and the clothes.
Yeah.
So what you need is something in that room. You can use a larger room, but you need something in that room that's going to absorb the excess sound waves and not bounce them back. So having, if you've got it in your office, you just need lots of soft things in there. So particularly in front of your face, like behind your microphone, you want something so things aren't going to bounce off that wall. So even if you're popping up some pillows or some foam or your blankets or whatever you've got, it's not like something thicker. Softer, thicker things are going to soak up more sound than just a thin blanket. So even just throwing a few cushions on the floor in the other side of the room is going to help soak some things up. But it's mostly the sound from in front of you and the sound from behind you that you want to stop.
So so also then I'm guessing you shouldn't have your laptop in front of you.
I don't have my laptop in front of me because my laptop has a little fan inside that goes and the microphone will pick that up. So I actually sit my microphone on the table. I've got like a 3-meter cable that comes with my microphone. So I set myself up a bit further away. So I get to edit out all the little running backwards and forwards from the microphone to the laptops as I'm pausing. But plenty of people do have the microphone in there. If you've got have the laptop in with you, I know Joanna Penn has it in with her little area. Because if you've got the mic set up in the right direction, you're not going to hear the fan too much. I just get paranoid about things like that.
Okay.
But another thing you can do is just you can buy them online, or you can create something that's just more like just a small foam lined cardboard box I've seen people do to sit up behind the microphone, so that as they're speaking, the excess sound goes into something smaller. So you don't necessarily have to get inside something that's going to make you feel claustrophobic. You just need to arrange things to absorb the sound from the directions that you're speaking.
Yeah.
And the best bet is to set it up, record a few things, then do the little sound check to check what the background noise is and that sort of thing.
Amazing.
So they're all the little steps that I've broken down in the book if you want to know exactly how to check those things.
I have written down about 4,000 notes already. So what mistakes did you make in the process that other authors could easily avoid?
Forgot to put the dog outside when I began recording. But those background noises, it's much easier if you can eliminate them to begin with. So make sure you put the dog outside or put the dog in another room, or wait till your husband goes to work so he's not trying to watch the telly, or those kinds of things. Making sure that you've got some quiet moments where you're not going to get interrupted. Put your phone on silent.
Yeah.
I read from my phone.
Me too.
I don't like turning pages. I don't like the page turning sounds. So I put the EPUB or the Word doc or whatever I'm reading from on my phone, and I'll scroll through there. That way I've got a backlit screen, because it's often a bit dark by the time you've buried yourself under a whole pile of blankets.
Yeah.
So at least there's a bit of light in there. You can see what you're doing. Another thing is to try to slow down. I speak too fast. But that's my natural speaking voice. It just means that you're not going to have to speed my audiobooks up to 1.5. I usually do when I'm listening to everybody else.
I listen on 2x speed as well, and I know that I have listened.
You don't need to chipmunk me.
No, I'm already sufficiently chipmunked. I have got to listen to only tiny snippets of this podcast, just because once I've edited it, I've heard enough of myself anyway. But I do sound like I'm on crack, so I mean, it's just ridiculous. So
that takes a bit of practice to slow yourself down.
Yeah.
Especially when you get interested and caught up in your own story, which is a good sign as far as I'm concerned. If I've gotten so caught up in my own story that I'm getting excited about telling it, it can't be that bad. Just don't speed me up and you'll be all right.
Yeah. And also I think we know where the intonation and where the expression comes. So I think it becomes quite, I know certainly when I was recording the non-fiction book, I did get very excited because I could put all of the, because I'm quite sarcastic and I make up swear words. So I was, getting to say all of my swear words in the voice I wanted to say them in. Right, so obviously I'm a huge fan of your book and I have recommended it already on this podcast and I am recommending it again today. But do you have any other recommendations, resources generally that other authors might find useful?
Well, as well as the ebook, paperback and audiobook, I do have an online course. So if you prefer to have that visual instruction and watch somebody actually doing the things, if that's something that appeals to you, I do have an online course version.
Which we will link to in the show notes.
Yes, because I've already sent you that link, obviously. I haven't completely forgotten about it till now. So I'll send you through that. I've found just scrolling through YouTube and listening to people speaking, with one of the books I want to do, I've very sensibly written in a character who has an accent that's not Australian, which I'm never doing ever again. That's another tip. Just don't write accents into your books if you don't want to have to learn how to do them. So I'm currently scrolling YouTube, listening to people who have that accent to try to get a little bit of a handle of how I can give that flavour.
Yeah.
Because with audio, if you're not a voice actor, you don't want to sound like you're taking the piss, if you know what I mean. So you need to give a flavour of something without overacting. So doesn't mean that you have to, if you've written somebody with an accent or a speech impediment or something, you don't have to go over the top with it because you will just annoy listeners, or at least me. So you need to find that balance where you can give that flavour, whether you have that come through in just a few words or something like that. So I'm practicing with that one at the moment. But you mentioned Joanna Penn. She is a fabulous resource because she's totally all over this at the moment as well, which is where I've got a lot of the inspiration to get out and have a go and do it. So Joanna Penn's got a podcast as well, The Creative Pen. And she's had quite a few interviews lately with people in regards to audiobook production and that sort of thing. So you can have a scroll through hers. I know she's got a book coming out soon. She's been talking about around all the audio stuff.
I think that's a course. Is she not doing a course?
Posts. She was talking about doing a course, and I think on her last podcast she was saying it was supposed to be a course, but she had sore shoulders and then something else happened and it's probably going to be a book now. But it'll probably turn into a course as well at some stage. I don't know. That's what I would do anyway. We'll make it everything.
We'll just assume.
But I know we'll see. I know she's got a few resources there anyhow. She's got some blog posts as well, and I was very excited to see my book mentioned at the bottom of one of her blog posts.
That's fantastic.
Who want to narrate their own audiobooks. My other claim to fame is David Gogren mentioned me in one of his emails.
No way, that's fantastic.
Well. Yeah, I was totally fangirling over that one. So yeah, there's some other people that are talking audio at the moment to keep an eye on.
Perfect.
But yeah, there's an audio book that Joanna mentioned that I went and had a listen to that's called Storyteller, How to Be an Audiobook Narrator. That book is only available as audio, and the women who produce that audiobook do a lot of demonstrations of how to use your voice, so it doesn't really work as an ebook so well. So that's a great one to listen to if you're wanting some tips on how to use your voice, because you can pick up a lot of the other tips from reading, but those sort of things you really need to hear them. So I found that one really useful to hear those sorts of things.
Absolutely, because there are different techniques for, reading quotes or for internal
Yeah.
thought, even changing your tone of voice for things like that, versus,
Yep.
air quotes or whatever else.
Yeah.
People, we ignorant writers don't consider when we are penning our fiction books, forgetting that
Uh,
they're going to be audio. Perfect.
yeah.
So, this is my favourite question always, but
Yep.
this is the Rebel Author podcast. So, tell
Mm.
me about a time you unleashed your inner rebel.
Okay, this was the scariest question for me because I've always been like that rule following, straight laced, do everything the right way kind of person. And I thought, I'm not
Lies.
a rebel. I've never been a
Lies.
rebel.
You did your
And I
own
thought about it.
audiobook.
I know. But this is me. This is me who said I'm not creative. Even after I'd written and published a novel, I still didn't see myself as creative. Um, and it took a bit of slapping around the face to say, you are creative. Look at all these other things that you've done as well. I used to make up my own patterns and crochet things and do all kinds of stuff, but I didn't think I was creative until probably last year I realised that.
You are
But
so creative. Oh my goodness.
I know, but we can't see it. Anyway, I go, I'm not a rebel. I was like, I remember when I was 14 in class at school, when the entire classroom broke into applause because I'd had my name written on the blackboard for talking and I was going to have to stay in at lunchtime. Like
No way.
they literally clapped because I'd never been in trouble before and they thought it was hilarious. I then proceeded to get my name rubbed off the board and didn't have to stay in lunch because I was good for the rest of the class. But I'm thinking, this is me. I'm not a rebel. And then I looked in the mirror this morning and went, well, I do have an asymmetrical haircut, 6 tattoos and a body piercing that I can't tell you about. So something has happened since I was 14 and I might have become a little more rebellious over time.
I love it. What tattoos do you have?
I have an iris on my back, a great big pink sweet pea on my thigh, and a daisy behind my ear. So I've got 3 flowers. I've got a little koi fish down on my ankle, and on my forearms I've got the words "forever and a day," which is lyrics from the song that my husband and I danced to at our wedding.
Aww.
Which was it was a traditional Thai Buddhist wedding in Thailand. We had a destination wedding.
Oh,
which
wow.
is also a little rebellious.
Oh
when
my
you think
God,
about
you're
it.
such a rebel. Girl, you're in so much denial. I'm not creative. I'm not a rebel. You are both of those things.
Totally am. Yeah, and the other tattoo is a couple of like a cartoon swing dancing couple on my right forearm.
I love
And
it. Amazing.
I want a book tattoo. I need something that's book related, but I haven't come up with a design I like yet. So once I think of something, I'll have another one.
Yeah, I am a rebel. That's what you should have tattooed. I am creative. I promised myself I would get a tattoo when I quit my job and worked for myself. And I still want to have the tattoo. I do have one. However, let me caveat this by saying I am not afraid of needles. However, I have a very bad habit of fainting every single time I'm injected. It doesn't matter when it's horrendous. If I'm in the dentist, they give me like the anesthetic stuff, but it has adrenaline in it, and most people are unaffected by that, but it speeds up my heart. I have a very sensitive heart, and I tend to get a bit fainty, and every time I've had a piercing, I have had a number of piercings. Every fucking time I will faint every single goddamn time.
I fainted when I got my ears pierced.
Yeah.
And like that was my first time that I was like actually deciding to be a rebel, because I'd grown up very strict Christian upbringings and it was very frowned upon to wear jewelry, and so getting your ears pierced was like, that was terrible, you don't do that. So I was in my early 20s, just broken up with a guy and had sort of started not going to church anymore. And I thought, I'm going, like the next day I had a half a day off work. I didn't have to start till after lunch. I thought, right, I'm going to get my ears pierced, because that's what we do when we break up with someone. We go and dye our hair or chop it off or get a piercing or something ridiculous. So I went, right, that's it, I'm going to get my ears pierced. And I rang up all the pharmacies around the place that could do it, and nobody could do it that morning. Everybody had somebody coming in the afternoon or the next day or something like that. So I got in the car and I drove up the road to the local body piercing tattooing place and went in there and thought, rightio, I'll just get my ears pierced. So I got it done with the needle in there, and I was fine getting it done. I sat back in the chair and it pinched a bit, it hurt a bit, but I was okay. I felt fine. And I got up after probably 15 minutes, and I was standing at the counter, and I was just paid for it, and I was asking the woman about the self-care, what do I need to do? And my hands felt a bit tingly. And I thought nothing of it because I'd never fainted before. But so I'm standing there and I'm sort of rubbing my hands in my pants. I feel a bit tingly. I put my purse on the counter. And next minute I'm sound asleep in my bed.
No.
And I've woken up. And I'm lying in my bed and I've woken up and I see this woman like 2 inches from my face. And if you can imagine a woman who works in a body piercing tattooing place has very many piercings on her face. So I've come to this strange woman who's covered in body piercings, 2 inches from my face. And the thoughts run through my head is, who the hell are you and what the hell are you doing in my bedroom? Yeah. And it took me another minute or two to realise I was lying on the floor in this tattooing place.
Oh my God, I love it.
I wasn't actually at home in bed. So I then took the rest of the day off work, but it took me another half an hour to pull myself together enough to drive home, called in sick to work, and geez, I copped shit for calling in sick over getting my bits pierced. They didn't let me hear the end of that for a while.
In my defence, I have incredibly low blood pressure, which I inherited from my mother. So I am actually prone to fainting anyway. But yeah, I've had. Well, I won't tell you all of the things that I've had pierced, but I've had a lot of things pierced and I have fainted. The worst one was when I had my tongue pierced and I collapsed on the stairs, walking down the stairs, which was actually pretty dangerous, but I survived. So there's that. Okay.
Well, I survived the other one, but I did pass out the first time I got acupuncture.
Oh, really?
So I had needles put in the back of my neck. I was having a lot of sinus issues, so they sat me in a chair, put these things in the back of the neck, put a heat lamp on me. And of course I ended up passing out and fitting in the chair and carrying on.
No.
So they just went, okay, perhaps that's not a good idea. So the guy...
You think?
The guy said, come back, we'll do acupuncture again, but you need to do it lying down. So I had to do it lying down on the bed. Because he said it was something to do with the energy flowing up and down your body that makes you pass out. And if you do it lying down, then you're all right. Because the energy is flowing horizontally, not up and down.
Very interesting.
I found that interesting. It seemed to work all right for me. He said it works for the big biker guys, like the big, strong, tough guys that come in and reckon that they're fine. They're always the ones that pass out with acupuncture, he reckons.
Yeah, probably.
If you do it like this, you'll be all right.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. So tell everyone where they can find out more about you, your books, and your audiobooks.
Okay, my website is heysaidrenee.blogspot.com. If you can, I figured that's easier to spell than Conoulty. But if you can spell Conoulty, which is Conoulty, Google that and you'll find me pretty much everywhere. There are no other Conoulty authors out there at the moment. So if you punch Conoulty into Amazon or Kobo or wherever you get your books, you'll find all my books that way quite easily. I also have a podcast starting in November with my flash fiction. I do.
Very exciting.
If you want to have a listen to my stories without paying for them, you can have a listen to Fun Size Fiction, I've called it. So all the episodes are about 5 minutes. There's one little short flash fiction story. They'll be coming out weekly starting in November. So have a listen to them, and if you do like them, there is an option in there that you can make a donation.
Amazing.
Or buy one of the books. So, yeah, social media, I'm pretty much Facebook is where I'm most active, or Instagram. So I'll pop the links to those in the show notes too.
Perfect. And so as part of this podcast, you're going to run a giveaway, aren't you?
I am. I'd love to give away an ebook copy and an audiobook copy of my non-fiction book called Narrated by the Author. So if you're interested in learning how to narrate your own audiobook, you can enter the giveaway and have a chance at winning one of those. And if you're unlucky, you can go and buy one. They're only about $5.
And all of the information on how to enter that will also be in the show notes. Yeah. So thank you. I think we are just about out of time. So thank you very much for talking to me today. Thank you to all of the patrons supporting the show. If you would like to get early access to any of the episodes, you can do that by going to patreon.com/Sasha Black, and that is Sasha with a C. Thank you to everybody listening. I am Sasha Black. You were listening to Renee Conoulty, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. Next week, I'll be talking to Katie Forrest all about time management and how to be more productive. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.